Every creature on this planet spent countless generations getting shaped to fit it perfectly. Sharks grew fins tuned for water. Bats developed sonar to hunt in total darkness. Camels evolved humps to survive weeks without water. And then there's us. Direct sunlight damages our skin within minutes. Our joints wear down under our own body weight. Bringing a single child into the world puts a mother's life at genuine risk in a way no other mammal experiences. And we may be the only species that ever looked around at its own home planet and thought something doesn't add up. What if we don't fit here because Earth was never actually where we started? Stack up enough of these mismatches and a strange question starts to form, one that serious scientists have actually taken seriously rather than laughed off. Every trait on that short list looks less like ordinary wear and tear, and more like a set of specifications built for somewhere else entirely, then installed on a body that ended up here anyway. None of this proves anything on its own, and by the end you will see there is a very reasonable, very grounded explanation waiting for almost every point on the list. But taken together, physically, biologically, and even psychologically, the case is genuinely uncomfortable enough that it deserves a careful walkthrough instead of an instant dismissal. We are going to look at the full list of ways the human body and the human mind seem to argue against belonging here. Then look at the actual scientific case some serious, credentialed researchers have built around that discomfort, complete with real named scientists and real published evidence. And finally, look at why mainstream biology answers most of it convincingly, though maybe not quite all of it. If you are the kind of person who wants an uncomfortable question actually walked through instead of waved away, subscribing means you will not miss where this argument goes next. Start with something as basic as sunlight. Lizards bask in direct sun for hours without any protection whatsoever. Dogs, horses, elephants, and countless other creatures spend their entire lives under that same star and simply handle it. Their fur, their scales, their natural pigmentation all tuned correctly for the light hitting the planet. We had to invent a chemical lotion and physically apply it to our skin just to step outside without damage. Sit with that for a moment. We manufacture sunscreen because the very star our own solar system orbits is actively harmful to us, in a way it clearly is not for almost anything else living here. Now consider the spine. A large majority of adults will deal with chronic back pain at some point in their lives, and once that many members of a species share the exact same structural complaint, the sensible move is to stop blaming individual habits and start questioning the underlying design. Our spine functions essentially like a horizontal support structure that evolution attempted to stand on end. The discs stacked between each vertebra compress under gravity in ways they were arguably never built to withstand for an entire lifetime. Other upright, two-legged animals, kangaroos and large flightless birds among them, do not struggle with this the same way, because their skeletons were built from the ground up specifically for standing. Ours, by comparison, looks retrofitted, and not especially well. Then there is childbirth, and this one is genuinely brutal. Human birth is widely considered the single most dangerous delivery process of any mammal on the planet. Infant skulls are large enough that they barely clear the birth canal, and before modern medicine existed, childbirth ranked among the leading causes of death for women across nearly the entire span of human history. No other species routinely dies attempting to bring healthy offspring into the world the way we historically have. A horse delivers a foal in well under an hour, and that foal is standing and walking within a short time afterward. A human infant cannot even support the weight of its own head for months. We arrive completely helpless, dependent on constant care for years, more physically defenseless at birth than virtually any other creature that has ever existed. Then there are allergies. The immune system exists for one core purpose: keeping the body safe from genuine threats. In humans, that same system frequently declares war on things that pose no real danger whatsoever. Pollen, peanuts, household dust, pet dander, shellfish. A substantial share of the global population lives with some form of allergy, meaning a person's own internal defense network is actively attacking the air being breathed and the food being eaten. Either evolution made a fairly serious miscalculation somewhere along the way, or the human body was originally calibrated for a slightly different environment than the one it currently occupies. There is an even stranger detail buried in our genetics that rarely gets mentioned. Almost every mammal on Earth can manufacture its own vitamin C internally using a functioning version of a gene, sometimes labeled the gulo gene. Humans cannot. At some point in our evolutionary past, that gene broke and simply stayed broken, leaving us as one of the very few mammals forced to obtain an essential nutrient entirely from outside food sources, a vulnerability so significant it used to kill sailors on long ocean voyages before anyone understood why. But the strangest mismatch of all is not physical at all. It lives entirely in our heads. No other animal on this planet appears to understand that it will eventually die. Dogs do not lie awake wrestling with the concept of an afterlife. Dolphins do not experience existential crises. Elephants, for all their apparent grief behaviors, do not construct entire belief systems built around managing the terror of their own mortality. We do, universally, in every culture that has ever existed. We are the only species walking around fully aware that existence eventually ends, and rather than simply accepting that fact and moving on, we have spent our entire recorded history trying to argue with it. We build temples. We write elaborate philosophical systems. We organize entire civilizations around competing answers to what happens after death. What conceivable survival advantage does that constant background dread actually provide? For most of human history, this specific awareness has pushed people toward despair, toward madness, toward outright war. It reads less like a useful evolutionary feature and more like something you would expect from a creature that is dimly aware something about its situation is wrong without being able to name exactly what. And then there is the piece that is hardest of all to rationalize away. Every other species on this planet operates inside some kind of functioning balance with its surrounding ecosystem. Predators regulate prey populations. Prey populations regulate plant growth. Decomposers cycle nutrients back into the soil, closing the loop completely. Every organism plays its assigned role except us. We clear entire forests. We poison major waterways. We fill the atmosphere with gases that are measurably warming the planet. We have driven an enormous number of species to extinction already, and the pace is not slowing down in any meaningful way. We are not simply participating in Earth's ecosystem the way everything else does. We are actively dismantling it. And if you sit with that fact, honestly, it looks exactly like what you would expect from an organism dropped onto a system it was never actually built to belong to, one that does not follow the rules because those rules were never written with it in mind. So if we genuinely do not belong here in any deep biological sense, where would we have actually come from? In 1973, the molecular biologist Francis Crick published a paper that arguably should have rattled the entire scientific establishment far more than it did. Crick had already won a Nobel Prize in the early 1960s for helping work out the structure of the molecule that carries genetic instructions for every living thing on Earth. He remains one of the most consequential scientists of the past century. In that 1973 paper, co-written with the chemist Leslie Orgel, Crick proposed something genuinely audacious, an idea now generally known as directed panspermia, the possibility that life did not originate on Earth at all, but was deliberately seeded here by some other intelligent civilization elsewhere in the galaxy. The same man who helped decode the very language of life looked carefully at the story of life's origin on this planet and concluded the standard version did not fully add up. This entire line of thinking connects to a much older, much broader puzzle in science known as the Fermi paradox, named after the physicist Enrico Fermi, who once pointed out that given the sheer size and age of the universe, intelligent life should logically be common and detectable by now, and yet we have found no confirmed trace of it anywhere. Panspermia is one of several serious, non-fringe hypotheses scientists have floated in response to that exact silence. The idea that life, or at least the basic chemical ingredients for life, might travel between worlds far more easily than most people assume. And the supporting evidence for at least the timing problem is genuinely difficult to wave away entirely. Complex organic chemistry capable of supporting life appears to have shown up on Earth roughly 3.8 billion years ago. The planet itself is only about 4.5 billion years old, which means life-capable chemistry emerged within a few 100 million years of Earth's formation, an almost instantaneous window in geological terms. At that stage, Earth was still being regularly struck by asteroids and was only recently cooled from a molten, largely uninhabitable state. And somehow, Functioning biochemistry appeared almost the moment conditions technically allowed it. Researchers across multiple generations have found that particular timing genuinely suspicious. Then there is the Murchison meteorite, which fell in southeastern Australia in 1969. When scientists cracked it open, they found dozens of distinct amino acids embedded inside it, the fundamental building blocks used to construct proteins in every living organism on Earth, and several of those specific amino acids match the exact ones used by life here. Organic building blocks, quite literally, arriving from deep space aboard a rock. We also now know with certainty that life can genuinely survive that kind of journey. Tardigrades, the microscopic, eight-legged creatures, often nicknamed water bears, have been directly exposed to the total vacuum of space, intense cosmic radiation, and temperatures close to absolute zero, and survived every single time. In 2019, an Israeli spacecraft carrying a payload of tardigrades crashed on the lunar surface, and several researchers suspect at least some of those creatures may technically still be viable up there right now, simply waiting. Long before Crick and Orgel, the astronomer Fred Hoyle and his collaborator Chandra Wickramasinghe had already been arguing for a related version of this idea, proposing that comets regularly seed planets across the galaxy with organic material and even active microbial life, a theory that was widely mocked when first proposed and has since gained at least partial respect, as space missions keep confirming that comets and asteroids really do carry complex organic molecules. In 2013, the ecologist Ellis Silver published a book titled Humans Are Not From Earth, gathering together this exact list of physiological red flags: sunburn, chronic back pain, dangerous childbirth, immune overreaction, even the fact that our natural sleep cycle runs slightly longer than a full daily rotation of the planet. Silver argued these were not simply random quirks of evolution, but genuine signs pointing toward an origin somewhere else entirely. But here is where things get genuinely complicated, because mainstream biology actually has a solid, well-supported answer for nearly all of it. And honestly, that answer might be even more interesting than the alien explanation. Biologists call it evolutionary mismatch, and it holds up point by point. Back pain. Our ancestors only began walking fully upright somewhere around 6 million years ago. That sounds like an enormous stretch of time, and it is. But evolution moves slowly, far slower than most people intuitively assume. 6 million years has simply not been enough time for the spine to fully finish adapting to standing upright. We are, in a real sense, still walking around inside an early prototype that never received its final update. Sunburn traces back to losing our thick body hair, and the leading explanation involves temperature regulation. When early humans moved out of dense forest cover and onto open savanna, they needed an efficient way to shed heat while running long distances under direct sun. Sweat evaporates far more effectively off bare skin than through a full coat of fur, so we effectively traded protective hair for genuinely superior endurance, becoming capable of outlasting nearly every other animal on land over long distances. Sunburn is simply the ongoing cost of that particular trade. The vitamin C gene failure fits neatly into this picture too. Our distant primate ancestors ate enough naturally vitamin-rich fruit on a constant basis that a functioning internal synthesis gene became genuinely unnecessary, and unused genes accumulate damaging mutations over time with nothing correcting them, since there was no survival cost to losing a function you no longer needed. Childbirth comes down to what researchers call the obstetric dilemma. Human brains expanded rapidly, considerably faster than the birth canal could realistically widen to accommodate them, since a wider female pelvis comes with its own trade-offs for efficient, upright walking. Evolution was effectively trying to make us smarter and keep us walking efficiently at the very same time, and the pelvis got caught directly in the middle of that competing pressure. It is genuinely messy and genuinely dangerous, but it tracks logically. Even the environmental destruction fits a rational explanation. Our ancestors evolved in small, scattered groups on a landscape where resources felt functionally endless compared to how few humans actually existed at the time. Our brains are wired heavily toward short-term, immediate survival thinking, not toward carefully managing the long-term health of an entire planetary ecosystem. We are very likely not some alien species stranded here. We are simply an animal that became vastly more powerful, vastly faster than its underlying biological wiring was ever designed to responsibly handle. So, does that settle the entire question? Not quite, because even after every one of those explanations lands cleanly, there remains one thing evolutionary biology still cannot fully account for, and that is the raw speed of it all. In the roughly 4 billion year history of life on this planet, no other species has ever done anything remotely close to what we did. Dolphins have existed in something close to their current form for tens of millions of years. They are genuinely intelligent. They maintain complex social structures. They communicate in sophisticated ways. And across all of that time, they have never built a single tool, not one. Chimpanzees worked out how to use simple sticks as tools roughly 4 million years ago and have not meaningfully upgraded that basic approach since. And then there is us. We went from chipped stone tools to nuclear technology in roughly 2 million years. From controlled fire to an orbiting space station, from painting on cave walls to building artificial intelligence, from striking rocks together to landing robotic probes on other planets. 200 years ago, there were no railroads anywhere on Earth. A little over a century ago, powered flight did not exist. Less than a full lifetime ago, no human being had ever left the atmosphere. Only a few decades ago, there was no internet whatsoever. Nothing else in the entire recorded history of life on this planet has ever accelerated anywhere close to that rate. Scientists still genuinely disagree on exactly why. Some point to language. Some point to cooking, which delivered more usable calories and may have directly funded larger brains. Some point to a specific mutation in a gene called FOXP2 that may have unlocked more complex speech patterns. Others emphasize our unusual capacity to teach deliberately, stacking accumulated knowledge across generations, so each new generation could start from where the last one left off, rather than beginning again from nothing. All of those factors likely played some real role. None of them, individually or combined, fully explains the sheer velocity of the jump. Every other intelligent species on this planet needed tens of millions of years to develop gradually. We went from ordinary prey animal to the dominant force reshaping an entire planet in what amounts to a single geological blink. Crick could not fully explain that speed. Silver could not fully explain it either. Modern evolutionary biology can account for a meaningful share of it, but not the entire picture, at least not yet. Look, it is probably not literally true that we are aliens in any strict sense. The evolutionary evidence supporting our origin here on Earth is genuinely strong, and mismatch theory convincingly handles most of what feels physically wrong about us. We are almost certainly a product of this specific planet, shaped by the exact same evolutionary forces that shaped everything else living here alongside us, but almost certainly is not the same thing as definitely and when serious. Credentialed scientists, including one of the actual founders of modern genetics, look honestly at the available evidence and conclude that something here does not fully add up. That is not conspiracy thinking. That is simply science doing precisely what science is supposed to do, asking uncomfortable questions out loud and being honest whenever the final answer refuses to come out perfectly clean. It is the same restless curiosity that first made us look up at the night sky in the first place, the same drive that eventually led us to build rockets, telescopes, and small robotic probes just to see what was actually out there. Maybe that restlessness is not a design flaw at all. Maybe it is a clue. Because if we truly are entirely from here, then we are still the strangest thing this particular planet has ever managed to produce. A species that burns under its own sun, gradually breaks down under its own gravity, and still cannot stop staring up at the sky, wondering where it actually came from. And if some part of us genuinely is not from here, then we have spent roughly 200,000 years quietly trying to find our way back, without ever fully realizing it.